Let's talk about the busy Boston Bruins. This deal that they made today is one of the most important deals that I think could set a big imprint for the rest of today, tomorrow, going forward into the trade deadline. The Boston Bruins have traded defenseman Ryan Lindgren, forwards Ryan Spooner and Matt Beleskey, a 7th round pick in 2019, and their first this year to the New York Rangers in exchange for forward Rick Nash. A lot of people are looking at this and they're saying, yo, Rick Nash, what the hell? He's not that good anymore. He's really not the same player he was in let's go back to 2014, 2015, because that was the year when St. Louis and Rick Nash absolutely dominated. Nash got 42 goals. Last season, he got 28 points in 60 games? He's not good. He's not the same player he was back when he was in Columbus. Why did the Bruins give up so much? Why'd they give up a first, a 7th, Spooner, and Beleskey? So if you want to take a look at this from that point of view, then you gotta just understand the fact that Rick Nash is not coming over here to be a good long-term performer here. They want him for the playoffs. And if you look at this and you say, oh, well, why did they give up Spooner? Spooner got 25 points in 39 games. He had 50 points in 2016. He's pretty good, and I'll probably agree with that. Spooner is a solid player, but at the same time, in the playoffs, he hasn't really had an opportunity to shine. You take a look at Matt Beleskey, well, he's in Providence right now, so let's really not talk about him. Defenseman Ryan Lindgren, he is a prospect. He's playing for the University of Minnesota right now in his 2nd year. He has the A, 7 points in 33 games for, I believe it's the Gophers, I'm not sure. But I could totally see points of views on both sides saying that the Bruins got ripped off. And why did they trade this good defensive prospect, this good depth forward, an AHL player, a 1st, and a 7th, for an aging Rick Nash? And this is why I say the trade is important, because this trade is the staple of what rental forwards are going to be worth at this trade deadline. If Rick Nash is worth a 1st, a 7th, a prospect, a good depth player, and an AHL player, if he's worth that amount of assets, then what is a worse Thomas Vanek going to be equal to? Is he just going to be a 3rd like last year? I have no idea. But this, I don't want to say that Nash is absolutely the same level as Vanek, because Nash, the reason why they got Nash in this situation here is because you take a look at his playoff record. In 2017, 12 games played, 5 points. 2016, 5 games played, 4 points. 2015, 19 games played, 14 points. Nash is a playoff performer, and he is consistent in the playoffs. He has been in the position every single season that he's been in the postseason to actually make an impact. You could say 2 seasons ago, okay, but Nash didn't actually do anything. In 12 games, he only got 5 points. What the heck is that? Well, you know in 12 games, how many players get 0 points? Rick Nash is a player who plays well in the playoffs, and the Boston Bruins took him in for this reason. So if you take a look at Rick Nash, and you take a look at the player he is, and the play style that he has, it molds well with the Boston Bruins, and what they're hoping to accomplish in this postseason, it just got expanded. And this is definitely a blockbuster deal for sure, and I won't deny that. But there's another piece of this move that they made today that I actually wanted to talk about. It actually isn't really related to Rick Nash, but it's actually related to the Bruins as well. They signed Brian Gionta. So, Brian Gionta, he was the captain of the Olympic United States team, signed into a 1-year, one-way contract through 2017-18 worth $700,000. And anybody looking at this is going to be like, yo, man, the Bruins, they just took a time machine. They go back 10 years and they got a really good team. But what the hell's going on right now? What the hell's going on right now? And this is a really smart move by the Bruins, in my opinion, because I don't think Gionta is that unskilled in order to not play in the NHL. You could say, oh, well, he could barely crack the Buffalo Sabres this year, and he only played 1 game with the Rochester Americans, but he didn't play anywhere else. He was USA's captain, and granted, in the 5 games he played, he got 0 points, but as he got 30-something points last season, the season before that, and before that, and if you want to go one back further, you got 40 points. He's been a player who, at this point, you could say that he could just be a good bottom six kind of guy. Sure, his Team USA production wasn't really there, but at the same time, he might have the talent to be able to stay with the Bruins in a depth scoring role. And the Bruins now, all of a sudden, after just like 2 hours, they've increased their chances of doing well this postseason. That first line, it's still going to stay the same. Marchand, Bergeron, Pastrnak, you can't break that up. Rick Nash, maybe he'll go in on the second line, maybe he'll go in on the third line, who knows, but Krejci, Jake DeBrusk, you can have Rick Nash on that right side, maybe switch him over to the left side on the third line. Danton Heinen may need to take a step down, I don't know, but you could have Rick Nash on that second line. Brian Gionta, he's a player, he's also a right winger. You could put him on maybe that bottom six role. David Backes right now is on the right wing, so maybe Gionta slots in on that fourth line, and Asiari gets taken out. Corrali, Schaller, that third line isn't necessarily filled with the most notable names, but the Bruins have had really good depth within all their lines, so no matter how much you know the names, all these players have been playing well. And now their forward core just got stacked, because Rick Nash is here. He brings a good veteran playoff presence. Gionta is here. He brings even more of that playoff presence, and he's like a leader or whatever, quote-unquote. But, wow. What fantastic asset management here by the Boston Bruins. I will say, though, that you could argue that the return for Nash was way too high. A first, a seventh, a prospect, a good depth player, and an AHL player, all for a guy who's old. But at the same time, Spooner, he's an RFA. And a lot of Boston Bruins fans are saying that he most likely would not have been signed. So, if you look at it from that point of view, it makes sense. Like, okay, he probably wasn't going to be on the team next year, so why not include him in this deal, get something back that could actually help us tremendously right now. And I'm not going to sit here and say that Spooner is not as good as Nash. Like, Nash is better than Spooner. Let's be real here. And this move, along with the Gionta move, this is the Boston Bruins' last redeeming hope for giving Chara a second cup. They tried it in 2013, it didn't really work. They won it in 2011, I'm not going to talk about that, because for some reason I don't really remember that, right? Right? Amnesia, that's what it is. But they want to win the cup. And their season so far has been so impressive. All these point streaks and power rankings, number one, top 5 consistently. And now they've added Rick Nash. They've added Rick Nash in exchange for picks that I don't really know if they need them. Let's be honest, the Bruins got a good prospect pool. They got kind of a logjam of defensive prospects as well, so Lindgren doesn't necessarily seem like the biggest loss for the Bruins. Like, just looking at the AHL team, they got, like, Johansson and Zaboral and Lozon. Then you look at the prospects, Vakanainen is there, he's really good. Arneson and Clark, they don't necessarily need all the defensive prospects in the world, and Lindgren doesn't necessarily look like he'll be the best, so I can understand them giving him up. Beleskey, AHL player, whatever. Spooner, RFA, probably wouldn't have been signed. And in return, they get a huge step in the right direction for their playoff push in Rick Nash. And they got a Brian Gionta basically for free, because they were like, yo, let's sign him. They give up Spooner, they give up Beleskey. That gives up 2 roster spots, they get Rick Nash in return, that's an extra roster spot, and they use that to sign another guy who could potentially help them in their playoff run in Brian Gionta. So, yeah. 10 years ago, this would have been a fantastic team. Bergeron, Krejci, Pastrnak, then you got Rick Nash, Brian Gionta, David Backes, Zdeno Chara. Those guys are all kind of older now. Pasternak's gotten better. Bergeron, you could argue he's still on top of the world. Krejci, same thing. Backes, definitely not as good as before. Nash, definitely not as good as before. Gionta, definitely not as good as before. Chara, he's on top of the world again. He's really good again. Along with guys like McAvoy, DeBrusk, and Heinen, and Marchand, who have really stepped up. Marchand, I mean, you could say he stepped up a few years ago. Yeah, but not in the time frame when Rick Nash was in his prime. Like, Marchand was never necessarily, like, one of the best goal scorers in the league until, like, 2 seasons ago. So, yeah, Boston, man, I don't know. I don't know, man. It might be time to start considering the Bruins to go far in the playoffs once again. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Plus, thanks for Charles, Gaming, and bye.